Okay, all right. So, thinking about a base game, let me show you what I if I were doing it, how I would consider or what I would consider the very basic, like what I other than like the load order, that we talked about, which was like the official files, textures, meshes, bash patch, things like that. Um, is I would most definitely have, at the very least, this is just the very least, I would have buff out 4. I would definitely have buff out 4. In case there's a crash, it would provide more information. Baka, I do have Baka wait anywhere where I can literally sit down anywhere. Um, I don't use Lighthouse Papyrus. Or is it Lighthouse Papyrus? One of them I do not use. I can't think of the name of it right off. I don't think it's Lighthouse. Let's see. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I do. Okay, I do use Lighthouse, but there's another one. There's a brand new one out. I do not use that. But I do use the Lighthouse one. I can't think of the, like I say. There's another one. I can't think of the name of it. But yeah, so Baka is required for the other one. I don't know. No, I believe it's required for Lighthouse. I believe it's required for Lighthouse too. So, in order to have Lighthouse Papyrus Extender, I do need Baka Framework. So I would definitely put this one in here. This one does not have anything to do with memory allocation that I'm aware of. But he does, if you look it up, like if you go online and you actually look up Baka, if we go up here and we take a look at Baka, let's see if he actually does this. All right, so Baka Framework. Let's take a peek down here. So let's look at change logs. See where it says, like, for example, they do things like this. See, fixed a bug, fixed spell editor, fixed null pointer. So he does fix. He doesn't just add new functions. He does fix certain things in the original game. And I believe it's the same for buff out. Okay, so we take a look at buff out. Let's take a look at the change logs. So, see, it looks like he fixes. Maybe that's in the vanilla game. Let's see. Somewhere one of these actually fixed. See, he fixes different bugs on different things, and one of them actually fixes. Wonder if it's the Lighthouse Papyrus Extender. One of them actually fixes bugs in the. Yeah, one of these actually fixes bugs in the game engine. And I remember reading it, but I cannot right off tell you what that is. It'll fix it. It'll fix, like, in the power grid. Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember right off what that is, but one of them did fix the power grid, and I thought it was Baka, but it might not be. Let me see. Let's try this real quick. Let me go over to here and see if there's something I recently installed. It would have been something up in it's SUP. There we go. I'm pretty sure it's SUP. It's SUP, or wherever SUP is. I think it's SUP F4S. There we go. It's this. Okay, so this one here actually fixes, like, it'll fix wireless fix. So it looks like he went in and fixed, or tried to fix, he's making an attempt at fixing where the power grid gets broken. Now, I know SS2 does this to some degree, but he's actually doing this in different sections. So I would definitely consider SUP. So we have Baka Framework, Buff Out 4, and then SUP, this one. So those I would consider those the absolute base of what I needed. I would also add. Let me see here. I would also add. Let me think. I believe it's high physics fix. I would definitely add this one, a high physics fix. That one prevents weird problems with that prevents like weird problems when your frame rate goes above, I think, 60 frames a second or 100. And then another one I like is place anywhere or place everywhere, and that's the DLL for that. So you could probably consider that Lighthouse Extender. Some things are going to need that. And then if you want to include like Workshop Framework and HUD Plus, you'll probably need that as like a base. And I had a lot of things in here. You're going to need, I think this is Looks Menu. I believe EE is Looks Menu, so you're probably going to, that'll go with Looks Menu, I think. If you want to try this one's new. It's the FIOPS. You can add that as a base. But what I was looking for was the very basic. And then you would have like the next one. So you'd have your very base mod, and then you would have the next level, which would include a few more DLLs for a little bit more functionality. I'm trying to see here. Power Grid Tools, I believe that comes with SS2. I use Base Object Swapper, spelled just because almost some mods do require like Base Object Swapper, Spell Distributor, and there's one more. There's oh man, it fires off right off the bat. Oh man, let's see. It's God, I can't even think this morning. It's he does it's when he actually loads everything up. Give me a second here and I'll be able to look it up. It is not it's not SUP. Rob Copatcher. I told you I couldn't think this morning. It's Rob Copatcher. So those things might be considered the next level, like Rob Copatcher, Spell Distributor, and Base Object Swapper, because some mods actually require that. If they don't need the functionality, they won't use it. So that might be considered like a level 2 of a base. You have a base, and then you have a level 2. And then you can make sure like that works with SS2. And then of course I add fine zoom and a lot of other things. So break it down into sections. So try to get the DLLs in there. Like try to get those in there. Like I'm using see-through scopes, but I use the non-replacer version. And now that I look at it, some scopes will not link to see-through scopes scope list. So what I might need to do is use the replacer version. So your long and your short scope automatically use see-through scopes, which lets me use their reticles. It lets me choose the different reticles, which can be easier to see because a lot of times the vanilla reticles are all black, and if you're looking at something dark, you can't really see what you're pointed at, whereas if the reticle is like a bright blue or red or green, you can easily see it. And then, like I say, work on that, and like that would be like a next level. So you'd have your very basic game, and then SS2 would be in there, and then you would add some DLLs that you think might be absolutely necessary. Of course, like the SUP, Buff Out 4, and then Baka Framework. Get that in there, and then from there you can work on like you can decide, okay, I want to add things to the workshop menu. That shouldn't cause a problem. I think some require Settlement Menu Manager, SMM, so you need to put that in there, and then your workshop stuff. That should be fairly safe. I think SS2 has an auto check for that, but that should be fairly safe. And that way you and maybe transfer settlements. That might be something you might want to do in case you want to use transfer settlements to transfer your settlement layout. However, if you use SS2 and somehow it transfers, though it saves those settlement objects, you'll need SS2 to rebuild it. It might be interesting to build something SS2, let SS2 build its thing, and then use transfer settlements to save that settlement out and see if you can re-import it without having to rebuild it. Of course, SS2 won't be in charge of it. It won't be monitoring it because it's going to load the objects. There's not going to be any scripts running or scripts attached. But you could have a base settlement that would require SS2 to be in the load order, but wouldn't necessarily, you would need to load and run it. So you wouldn't have the people actively building it up and going through all that stuff. That would be interesting to see if that would work. I think it would, but I would still need to test it. And I think TIM is like a memory management thing. I'm not sure what that is. That might be required by Buffout 4. Um, and then I have weapons crash debris fix. I do have weapon debris. I heard it crashes. It crashes on NVIDIA. That not really sure. XDI. Some people like full dialogue interface FDI. Some like XDI. XDI kind of glitches sometimes where FDI does not. And I think on XDI, I think there is an MCM interface for that, which lets you change the string that's being displayed on the screen, so you could actually see the original dialogue, the original question, and then the reply behind that. Um, Simple impact like sprint stuttering fix might be necessary. That might be one that's required in your base game. So when you're running, it doesn't kind of do some weird stuff. Foreplay, I think that does. I think Foreplay does something like had something to do with loading lists that are certain size. I forget on this. Like NavMesh fix, like Foreplay long loading times maybe. Um, that comes with SS2. Let's see. Crafting highlights not required. Extra item is not required. In Xanart, you don't need that. Don't need that. Combat, combined combat XP. What that does is if I'm in combat and I'm killing NPCs, it's not going to give me. It's not going to pop up and tell me XP, XP, XP. It waits till I'm done and gives me a combined XP. It also works for, if I'm not mistaken here, it'll also work for when you discover location. So if I discover a location and I'm in combat, normally it'll pop up and say discovered location even though you're in combat. Using that mod, it will not say discovered location until I am out of combat, and then it'll pop up and say discovered location. Um, yeah, you don't need wait anywhere, anything like that. So I would consider that kind of like a base. Get like the base going. Uneducated shooter lets you lean. And then, like I said, I would take it to the next base level. So, and then see if that, because we'd actually need some people to test this out. So you'd have this set up. They would have this in the load order. Need to play it and see if it works. See if they have any problems. If SS2 works fine, and then start adding them in a chunk at a time or a category at a time. You got your weapons and armor, add that in. Is there a problem? We change vanilla companions if you want to do that. Make them look better, make them look worse. See if there's a problem. And you would need like almost constant testing with that. And then be able to save, because there is a way. There's a way you can. There's an MCM. There's a plugin that lets you save your configuration options, so you can configure everything, export that file because it saves the file, and then upload that, or even write a little application to just simply copy from a folder whichever settings you want to use, and then the MCM will load that automatically because it'll save that. You copy that over as the MCM file, and it has all the variables and stuff in it and the settings. So literally, you could say for this, use this setting, and that would set Nax to be something because it has an MCM now. And that's what I was going to get at next. So after the textures, you might want to have like your weather mod, and then let's say along with your textures, your water mod, something that kind of works together that gives you what you're looking for. You don't necessarily need a texture mod, but you would need something to lock in the weather. I believe you can do that with the console. You can lock in a specific weather. But you need something to lock a weather in. So if you want to have it irradiated all the time and then have nothing but feral ghouls, then you could do that. So like you could in the simplest form you could have a locked-in RadStorm and then use Gas Mask of the Wasteland and make sure that it has a compatibility patch to use with NACS. And I think there's a thing with HUD UI, and that's another thing I would look at is something like HUD UI, which lets you change the HUD. I know people said they had problems with SS2. I have never had a problem like that, so I'm not sure what all's going on with that. Like, I've never had a problem with that. So I've used SS2 along with HUD UI and different HUDs, and I've never had a problem. At least not what they're describing. Maybe there's a problem I didn't notice, but not what they're describing. And you could look at things like that before you start getting into putting a lot of the other mods in, which do change scripts and things like that. When you do, it shouldn't be too hard. Like, I wrote these libraries, all these libraries over here, these coded libraries, like this games library, is designed to work from a command line or from a Windows form like this. So it's not going to be a problem if a command line tool, a quick and dirty if you want to call it, but a command line tool basically can check for uh, conflicts and things like that. It can do the same thing because basically I'm just calling functions that's setting up data in data tables, and then I'm just reading through those tables and throwing up stuff. So everything that builds the tables is all intrinsic functions, and then you just have to decide what you want to do with it. Uh, okay, so that being said, it would be easy to go in and activate plugins, deactivate plugins, and all that kind of stuff with just little command line tools. Okay, so yeah, that's what I would do there. Base game SS2, and then find out what you absolutely need, and then go to the next level of what you really like. You really like you absolutely want to have, but it's not mandatory. But what you want to have, and then put that in as far as like DLLs go, textures, weapons, armors. Uh, and then change the companion look. Like I have a better Curie. She has like a really nice haircut. She looks much better than her original. Um, I like that much better. Have that, and then test it out, see if it works, and then try adding other things that use DLLs before you add other mods. Like see-through scopes, I have fine zoom, which lets me use the mouse wheel to scroll in and out. Things like that. Put all that in and then play through and see if you have an issue. If there's no issue, that would probably rule out F4SC and the fact the DLLs are getting injected, but they may have function calls that are not being called because scripts don't call them. They provide the functions, like usually SUP and those provide callable functions from scripts, but they themselves don't do anything other than just make themselves available. So you wouldn't necessarily see a problem unless the script actually called that function. So that would be something to consider. And then from that point, add things like try putting in Pack Attack NPC, Pack Attack Companion Edition. Put those in. You have to get those off the Discord, but put those in. And just with SS2 and see if it causes a problem. You know, because that's the thing is there's so many mods in here, and somebody's like, okay, I got a problem with your mod, and they're like, well, there's no way I can check out the data and all the scripts and what is what. But I believe it is possible because if I can provide enough information, if I can provide all the conflicts, like if I could literally go in to, let's say, let's go HUD framework up here. So let's say I go up to HUD framework, and I can go in here and I can say, show me the conflicts with HUD framework, and if this is accurate, if my coding is correct and this is accurate, I can actually say that HUD framework overwrites HUD menu Swift. But there is another one on disk which has come from something else. I'm not sure what this is. I might be able to, what I could possibly do is this. Let me a second here to think about what I could do. Alright, so what we're going to do is look at which mods We're looking for HUD menu SWF. This will take a moment because it's got to buzz through a lot of different files. So basically what this is doing is this is scanning all of my available mods, all the loose files. I don't believe this is not looking within archives because this is a loose file, and it's telling me that this loose files always have precedence. So this one is the one that's being used. The one that's last is always being used. So it looks like it's coming from Fall UI. Okay, so Fall UI did overwrite the HUD menu. Now that may cause a conflict, it may not. I have not noticed a problem with it. I got the HUD, I got the SS2 icons and everything just fine. And I use immersive HUD. So sometimes it'll get confused where I'll have to disable immersive HUD then re-enable it. But other than that, it's fine. So yeah, it's coming from here. It's right here. This is where it is. And this shows every instance. See, this one got overwritten. This one is not being used. This is because this is actually what default UI size. What this does, it scales all of my UI down to fit into a 32:9 format. Otherwise, everything looks, the scaling is wrong. But if I use this one up here, if I use that one instead of this one, HUD UI, Fall UI will tell me that I can't display the HUD because it needs access to its own HUD elements and code that is within the Swift file. So with this information, it would be possible to say, yes, HUD framework is being overwritten. It's being overwritten by Fall UI. However, I have not noticed the problem. When I went into a settlement, I could see the SS2 menus just fine. You know, the one that shows your resources and all of that. But I did have something, like I didn't quite have the menus that everyone else had. They had this neat little SS2 down the side, which shows a lot of things. I never did get that. I don't know if that comes with HQ. I'm not really sure. But from what I played, I really didn't notice that big of a problem. But I do know that immersive HUD by Gopher, occasionally I have to turn that back off, turn it back on, because somehow the variables get confused or overwritten, where I'm assuming it's just not taking immersive HUD into consideration. And like, for example, things that should be invisible during certain conditions will be visible. In order to reset that back to the immersive HUDwork settings, to basically hide or wrap them around a conditional, I will need to turn it off and back on again. I do have to do that occasionally. But this will provide enough information here to say, yes, it is, and it may or may not be the problem, and I can easily test it. So you can tell me what's not working in HUD Framework, in Fall UI or SS2, and I can see if that makes a difference. Because I can easily go into this. I don't know if I have it here. Yeah, I can easily go in here. I can copy this file. I can directly copy this file. I can directly install this file, which will overwrite this. Fall UI will no longer work. I don't know if there's any from, like, here's HUD Framework. But yeah, see here, like this one. See, I can install this directly from HUD Framework right here. And I just go in and I just do an install file. That will install the file. So now when I run it, Fall UI will no longer work. But I can see if SS2 works. So I can easily kind of test it and check things out. So, but this will provide it. So I guess what I was getting at is I can provide enough information. So somebody says, oh, it's a conflict. No, it's not, because these are all the conflict files. Yes, I do open the BA2s. I grab all the files. I create a giant database in real time of what these plugins load, if it's active, what they load, and the order that they're loaded in, and that's the actual conflict list. So here, for example, I can show conflicts again in the Fall UI, and you can, not Fall UI, but in unofficial patch, and you can see every instance where there is a conflict. So here, as an example, the glass effect in the memory lounger, see, that's from the original. Here's the unofficial patch. There's Fate, but then I override it with Gloomy Glass. So Gloomy Glass has the final say on that particular materials file. All right, so if I wanted the Fate changes to override this, I would have to go over here to Fate, and I would need to move Fate down below. It'll be in yellow here. I would need to move Fate. I would need to move this down below Gloomy Glass. Once I did that, but it's an ESL, so Gloomy Glass must be down here somewhere. It has to be below this. So I would have to do. I don't know if I could do. I could. I would have to use the ESP version of Fate and then move that down in the load order. And they provide the ESP version in case you need to make sure that it overrides everything, so that its changes take precedence. And that should be about that. I don't want the video to be too long because I know this is a whole lot of information to go through, and each one of these is about a half hour. So I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to go, I have to have some breakfast. I'm going to go scramble up some breakfast real quick, and I'll be back down. I'll try to be in and out of the forums a little bit. I do have some coding I need to do, or at least I want to do, before work hits again this upcoming weekend, because this gives me a nice 5 days off. So I got a little bit more I need to do, and get this list taken care of. And yeah, I'll be here. If you need anything, just holler at me, and I'm always glad to help.